Oh, cool. How many are not from Colorado?
Rise of the humans.
Have fun. Creativity, strategic thinking, problem solving.
Welcome, everyone. Really excited to be talking about data. Data is my passion. Data is my life. Across my career, I have been some mix of a data plumber and a data geek, and now I get to be all those things, which is super fun. I'm Corey Snow. I work at Huron Consulting Group, and I lead our CRM strategy practice. And that means that I get to work on all the fun things that need to happen before somebody can be wildly successful implementing their CRM technology. And a huge component of that is data. My career journey is really messy. I've worked at over 13 verticals. And across all of this, I think the thing that's most common across all of these positions and all of these jobs is data. Transcends everything, embedded in the fabric of everything that I do. Before I was at Huron, I worked on the education cloud team at Salesforce and had the role of being the specialist in data integrations and architecture for all things education cloud, which was super fun. Before that, I was CRM strategist at Harvard, working across the enterprise to help all the schools and units be really successful with all of their CRM investments. And that's my day job today. So I serve the higher ed industry, and I act as their CRM strategist, and I aspire to be the consultant that I wish I could have hired in 2016 instead of having to figure this all out myself. I'm in the Salesforce ecosystem because of the community. The technology is pretty good, but the community is really great, and it's the thing that brought me in, and it's the thing that keeps me in. Before I worked for Salesforce, I was Salesforce MVP, which is a really great community of givers. I founded the higher ed user group program with Salesforce and started the first user group in the Northeast. Now there are 8 across the country and also globally. I was on the Higher Ed Advisory Council, which is a really great group of givers. If you ever have any questions about anything at the intersection of Salesforce and higher education, reach out to some of the folks on the council. They volunteered to help the community. I founded the first open source sprint in the education community, and this was built upon what we were doing in the nonprofit community. And I urge all of you to have a look at what's happening in the open source world. There's some amazing things that are happening, and those sprints continue to this day, and there will be one coming up in Chicago in just a few weeks. So have a look into that. And I was one of the founders of Northeast Dreamin. So we started in 2018, still going strong, very much inspired by coming to Mile High Dreamin back when it was a one-day, one-track event, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm going to talk about 4 things related to unleashing the power of your data, why it matters, the network effect, the rise of the humans, and key success factors to enable you to work with your stakeholders, your clients, and have it just elevate the conversation around data, how to approach all things data, data discussions, and data strategy. So I'll see if I can get all of that in. We're going to start with why it matters, because I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek, and the power could go out, and the fire alarm could go off or something, but you all will have learned something in the first few minutes, maybe, about why it matters. This actually comes from Peter Coffey, who was here at Mile High Dreamin when it was a one-track show before COVID. And he introduced me to this idea. Get ready. This is the slowest rate of change we're ever going to experience. And this was before COVID. So I think you've probably noticed things are accelerating. We are not destined to live in slow times. Everything is going to move faster. And there's a reason for that. I totally stole these from Peter Coffey too. Um, it's this line. This is computational power, right? It's like these are exponential forces. This is bandwidth. And this is the global data sphere. So all the world's data will double in just 2 years. We are awash in data. There is plenty of it. I used to work at EMC back then. We said all the data in the world will double in, I think it was 5.5 years. So accelerating pretty quickly. And data is the new oil. It really is. 2019 was the first year that none of the top 10 companies are oil companies starting in 2019. That's when that shifted, shoved right off. All the ones with the little buckets, I would call largely data companies. They do other things too. And even the ones without the little data thing, they probably consider themselves data companies today. But critically, when Clive Humby said data is the new oil in 2006, everyone says data is the new oil, data is the new oil, right? They leave out the second part of the sentence. It's valuable, but if unrefined, it cannot really be used. Data is only valuable if it can be distributed to the right places at the right time for the right purposes, right? He did not say data is the new gold, right? Absolutely has to be refined, and it's always surprising that they leave the second part off because that's actually the most important bit. But data really provides the fuel for all of the digital transformation that we're seeing. It is the fuel of the information age. However, but data is really not the point. The point of data is not the data itself. It's what it enables you to do. So I sketched this on a envelope years ago. That's my actual drawing. So it's actual like napkin thinking. And so I kind of stick with it. It seems to work pretty well. This is kind of like the progression of knowledge, right? Like we're awash in noise, right? We got to filter that stuff out. But then you get to the data, and that's foundational to all of these other purposes. But information is not knowledge. Knowledge is not as good as wisdom. And then I think we're all aspiring for enlightenment, whether that's human or machine. We'll see. But that's changing too. But the reason all of this works and the reason data is so important is because of this fun thing called the network effect. And in the magical land of the network effect, 1 and 1 is always worth more than 2 because the network is worth more than the nodes. So if you take system A and you take system B, you have the value of A, you have the value of B, you connect them together, you unleash a new value stream C, which is the combined power of those systems, and the interoperability between them is a new value stream. So magical land, big multipliers, and this is really kind of the why of interconnectivity and interoperability and why it all works. Interestingly, the network effect also works for human networks, which is why I invest so much in the Salesforce community, because it has this multiplier effect. We all experience it. But because the network effect is so powerful, the network is becoming more important than the nodes. So we still talk a lot about information systems, but I think we'll increasingly be talking instead about information networks, because the endpoints are not what's interesting anymore. It's how they all weave together. This is a little more typical. So this is kind of our systems diagram at Harvard. I made a tiny dent in it. If you can find like a little line that's like purple or something, those are like the APIs that I built. Harvard's first reusable APIs that were ever stood up. And this is really typical, right? It's not just higher ed. All the enterprises that go into still will rely a lot on FTP and file transfers and one-time fees. It's pretty messy. But I think the point of data, if we think about it, and if you're talking to your stakeholders, there's like 2 really important things about data that are unique in a CRM context. And the first is that data powers insights. So I was around, I've been working with data for a long time, right? In the 90s, we kind of had like relational databases came out, and you could sort of, maybe figure out what happened, that kind of descriptive analytics, running some reports. And then it got a little bit better going into the 2000s. We started seeing like early BI tools, and you could learn something about why maybe it happened. And now we're moving to a whole new age, right, where we can kind of predict what might happen. And if you've heard anything about data and AI, you've probably seen Salesforce marketing literature. This is actually a thing. But I think what's really cool is how can we change the future, right? And I think that's where all of this is going. And the tools that are coming out today, the capabilities that we're seeing now, are elevating everything from being able to sort of figure out what's going to happen, but then like what can I do to change the outcome? That's very cool because we all want to change the future and we want to mold it and we want to shape it to ourselves. It's like it's all part of our evil master plan, which is fun. But the second thing to talk about in data that's unique in the CRM context is data powering experience. So this is what somebody back in the industrial age thought that the future classroom would look like. It's like you just like cram the information into the children's head through the machine. Like that'd be really great. But we really used to line up. I've been in technology a long time. Like we used to line up the humans to serve the needs of the system because that made systems more efficient, right? So we were lining up to make the systems more efficient so that they could do their one value add in the chain, right? It's like there's an assembly line, and we think like an assembly line. You can replace part of the assembly line with a machine, but in order for that to happen, the human would have to do their part, to make that all work. So, like lining up systems to meet, the humans to meet the needs of systems, that was the early part of my career. You have to do it because the system demands it of you, and that's still often, the experience. I work in higher ed. Sometimes that's the experience that people have today, where you have to get in like one line to do a thing. Why? Because the system demands it. And you got to get another line to do a thing. Why? Because that system demands it. And they don't talk to each other, right? But we all know, right, that if we're doing that, our customers, our consumers, they know we're holding out on them because if you ask them what's their peak experience, someone will say, oh, it's Amazon, right? Well, Amazon, underneath Amazon, there are thousands of systems, right? But you don't see any of them. Why would you want to? That stuff's ugly, right? Someone the other day said, oh, it's the Gap. That's my favorite. I'm like, oh, tell me more, right? I'd be annoying if I sat down next to you like on the subway or something. I'd be like, what's your peak experience with technology? Sometimes people look at me funny, but that's what I love to do. But we've talked a lot about the machines, we talked about the AI, but let's talk about the rise of the humans because we work in human-centric technology, and really that's kind of why it matters, right? So all those like systems of transaction that are underneath, like the point of all this stuff is that the technology class we work on sits on top of all of those systems that are in the background, and we don't need to line up the humans to serve those systems because we can serve up an experience layer that sits on top of them. And all of those systems can contribute their unique value to the information network, but you don't have to see them. And this is what's emerging today. A lot of the Salesforce technology enables this, and Experience Cloud, the Lightning web pages, there are all these things that you can do. You can be a front-end developer in Salesforce now. That's very new, right? This is a thing. That could be your next career. It's all breaking loose. So, wrong way. But this is another thing I think that's important, right? Is we think about Salesforce, we think about CRM, we think about where did that come from? Well, like the sort of analog equivalent was probably a Rolodex or something. But I said that to my son. He's like, I don't know what that is. But it once was a thing, right? And but then in parallel, there's like MarTech that develops separately. And that's, I don't know what's the paradigm. The parallel for that would be like, I don't know, a phone, a fax, a telegraph, carrier pigeon, something like that. And then, but really it's all coming together as one thing. So when I talk about CRM technology with my clients, I'm talking about all this stuff. I'm not just talking about, the Rolodex part of CRM. That's just not useful anymore. It's the fact that all these things are coming together as one thing, providing a single experience, that changes the world. But it's all powered by data. So let's get to some key success factors. So when you're talking to your stakeholders in your company or your clients or whoever you serve as a data geek, here are a few key success factors. So these I found these are for the ages, right? It doesn't matter what client I'm talking to. They have to be thinking about all of these things. The first one's pretty obvious. Where's the data? What is the data? Where's this data stored? The management layer, that's how it's all glued together. Those are both pretty obvious. Data quality is something that is like at a low state. I think just when going into clients at large enterprises, the state of data quality is really pretty rough and raw on the whole. But ultimately, if the data is not trusted, if the stakeholders don't trust the system, you won't get adoption. When I go into situations where folks will have a big instance of Salesforce and they'll say, well, I'm struggling mightily with adoption, right? And then I'll go out and I'll interview all the people and they're like, why are you not using it, right? And often it's, I don't trust the data. The quality's super low. So the value of the data goes up so much if you can improve the quality, but also the value of the system and the return on that investment goes up if you can improve the data quality. And then data governance is something that's often not talked about very much in the CRM community, but data governance isn't just about preventing people from doing things, right? It's actually, if you think about in the information age, maybe your most valuable thing is your brand, possibly. If you got a well-known company or you're known for something, the next most valuable thing you have is probably your data. And the way that that's governed is key to how it can be unleashed or not unleashed or locked up or released, right? So if you think about data as an organizational asset that you want to unleash, the only way you can unleash it is to have really proper data governance in place. And so I spend a lot of time working on data governance with my clients, and it can really change everything, especially if you can embed the governance into the technology so that it doesn't have to be constantly human monitored, right? It's like these are our rules of engagement. These are all the access and the privacy stuff. If you can embed that into the system, that's pretty amazing. And it's something that's especially good on the Salesforce platform is this ability to very specifically control the use and access to the data. And this is getting better all the time. Thank God for Cheryl Feldman, my friend, who's improving these things all the time. But with a whole permission sets and permission set groups like this is really important. And when I first worked on the Salesforce platform, this was just a very difficult thing to manage. So getting better all the time. And then critically, security and privacy dimensions. Like privacy requirements are not going down. Companies are increasingly having like chief data privacy officers and things like that. Higher ed now has they're starting to have privacy officers separate from security officers. This is where the world's going, and I think privacy could be, instead of like thinking about that as something that prevents someone from doing something, right? If you can generate trust with your customers by honoring their privacy. Business is way better for you, right? I mean, if you interview, as I often do, customers, and they talk about their kind of best digital experience, and they talk about their worst digital experience, they're often talking about not honoring their preferences in a meaningful and purposeful way. And if you've ever unsubscribed from a thing, it's probably because they were breaching your trust. I'm finding this to be really helpful all across the community to really start thinking about data not as kind of like the data that's here, the data is there, but more as a marketplace of exchange, and thinking about who are the consumers, who are the providers, what are the products, what do they cost? Because everything you build has a cost. It has a sustaining cost, it has a build cost, storage cost. Sometimes if you look at inventory of potential things you could connect, some of them are not worth doing in the first place because there's just not enough value in it. So, and what's the value? So sometimes this marketplace mindset really works, especially for non-data geeks. If you can turn things into an analog paradigm, you can have a much better conversation with non-technology people. And then I've been doing a lot of work in the kind of this concept of a data fabric, which I like because you can think about the information network as having a lot of threads. It often has tears in the fabric, so you can say, oh, there are tears in the fabric, right? Also something that works, an analog that works really well for non-technology people. And it all works if it's exquisitely woven together into a beautiful tapestry. So these stories are, they're good for non-technologists and your stakeholders. You can kind of adopt these paradigms. But the key aspects of the data fabric, as I've invented it, at least in my mind, right, is components of identity. Identity is incredibly important. We work in CRM technology, like we're more or less trafficking in identity, and we can't provide really exquisite, personalized experiences at scale unless we kind of know who we're talking to and what they care about and why that's important, and also honoring their preferences and their desires. So delighting our constituents relies on identity. And the next thing is really the data orchestration. This is a little bit obvious. I think of that more as the middleware, the ETL, the ESBs, the event-driven things that you can do. Salesforce is just so powerful. It's got so many different ways that you can integrate with other systems. It's usually the easiest enterprise system in the stack to integrate with. And it's always the other end that's the challenge. That's what I found. Thinking about that data marketplace. So the data marketplace, you could think about that. Often it's an API scheme where you're exposing data out into marketplace. And at Harvard, I created a data marketplace, and people could browse it and they could say, wow, what data is available? How do I get it? How do I sign up? How do I get the permissions? That made it just so much easier to discover the fact that there was data, to get it into your systems, to subscribe to all of that. That's all kind of part of that marketplace. The predictive intelligence, often the highest value thing, and it's not always thought of at the beginning of like a Salesforce implementation, is that you'll do all this work, you'll create all the shiny plumbing and all that, but like the highest value thing out the other side is probably that intelligence, that situational awareness, that knowledge, the ability to run your business more intelligently, the ability to to respond quickly to changes. This is the resilience that can be really created if you have a really sound data strategy. The data asset layer. This is really from a Salesforce perspective, this is the metadata of your information network. You have to be able to describe what it is and where it goes. Sometimes there are some really good tools for this. I often use something like data lineage tools, right? It's kind of, you can build a whole metadata layer that describes your entire information network, and then that makes it easier to govern and easier to manage. Analytics, we all know what that is, and then the emergence of CDP, and I know like CDP, kind of was the name of a Salesforce product, but really it's a term of art. And the difference, and this is like a key thing because my customers struggle a lot with exactly what does that mean and why is it different. I think the best way to think about the CDP side of the house is these are, because we're working with humans, this is human-centric technology. Humans have attributes, but humans have this annoying habit of actually doing stuff, right? And so like the CDP is more about action. It's about what humans do, human interactions, human touch points. Other enterprise systems don't concern themselves much with that, but we have to worry about that quite a lot. So this is really what's changing. It is coming out of the MarTech stack, right? But it's all converging together. This is a really big deal. And I think every enterprise should be thinking about, because often these investments are large, they take a long time. You don't want them to be obsolete by the time the work's done, right? Everybody needs to be thinking about CDP, have to be thinking about the human behaviors as well as just the attributes of the humans, like in the old kind of CRM world. And then automation, this is the most amazing thing because this is another layer of convergence, right? So we talk about the composable enterprise and all the data orchestration that can be done, the interoperability, the integrations, and then coming out of a different tech stack was this sort of robotic process automation, RPA, like you might have heard of that. And this is about causing systems to do something. If you put those two things together, that's the thing that's emerging right now. So it's great to be able to orchestrate the data, but if you think about the network being more powerful than the nodes, maybe the network should be controlling the nodes. So if you think about like orchestrating for data integrations, that's done all the time, right? But if you combine that with I'm pushing the data in and I'm making the system do something with it, that's like, you become the omnipotent, all-powerful being. And you can externalize that logic and not have it in those endpoints. That can be really powerful. So those are just a few thoughts. This is often a 90-minute class. So this is a 20-minute version of a 90-minute class that I used to do for partners when I worked at Salesforce. So hopefully you got some ideas out of this, and hopefully you'll be able to go out in the wild and inspire all of our kind of non-technologists to become their own data geeks. And I think we're on the realm of unleashing the citizen data scientist. Finally have the tools. So thanks for joining.